you look at some of the accounts from the organizers, and one says, quote, "This mission is not about delivering humanitarian supplies, it's about breaking Israel's siege on 1.5 million Palestinians." So when you hear that it was a humanitarian effort, you have to kind of question that, because certainly it was more political than that. Another one said, "A violent response from Israel will breathe new life into the Palestine Solidarity Movement, drawing attention to the blockade." And there's also evidence that the organizers were connected with Hamas in some ways. So the IHH, which was the Turkish humanitarian organization that organized this effort, apparently is connected in some ways with Hamas, and some claim jihadi networks, although I don't know about that. I shouldn't say that right now. Let's see if I can find a quote here. So there's one quote from the Jerusalem Post, which I don't know if we should take, to be totally credible, but it said, "At least 5 of the activists aboard the Mavi Marmara have links to terror organizations," the IDF announced on Sunday night. The 5 were named as Fatima Mohammadi, Ken O'Keefe, Hazan Anseh, Hussein Arush Ahmad Mamoun. Okay, so some say that they have terrorist organizations, terrorist intentions, or just radical intentions. At the very least, some of them had expressed a desire for martyrdom beforehand, and there was a wife of one of the dead who confirmed this. And then, in addition, there were some statements in the correspondence between the two ships, the Navy, the Israeli Navy, and the Mavi Marmara, that indicated some serious, biases on the part of the activists, and bad intentions. One was, "Go back to Auschwitz," was one of the quotes from the flotilla. Pretty provocative statements from the activists. It is probably a little naive to think that they were just humanitarian aid workers. Definitely not the case. But the question is, did the Israeli Defense Forces use excessive force when they got on board? Were they responding in self-defense when they got on board, or were they immediately getting on board and firing? I would say it's a tough call, but when they were going to board the ship, helicopters were flying overhead. There were noise bombs being used. Apparently there were paintball guns, and the paintballs were filled with things like glass and tear gas. Potentially no gunfire, live fire was shot. And it's possible that the eyewitnesses were thinking that live fire was shot by the Israelis when in fact it was only paintball guns, or maybe rubber bullets, which were also used. So there's the potential for the activists to have mistaken some of these other less deadly means of violence for gunfire, and then felt they had to respond in self-defense. That's definitely a possibility. The option that the Israeli Defense Force had was fairly limited. They couldn't just let this flotilla go through. Boarding it was kind of what they felt was the only way to go. But this is pretty questionable. I look at some of the other boats that were in the flotilla, so apparently 4 or 5 of them. And some of them, I guess their rudders were blown out. And I asked to myself, why wouldn't they blow the rudders out of this Mavi Marmara, especially when it's 600 people on board, huge crowd that is going to kick your butt when you come on board. I don't know why they didn't do that, and this would just go to the general claim that Israel was very stupid in approaching this tactically the way that it did, that it should have avoided jumping into a crowd commando style to then just be thrown off the boat and then have to use violent force to defend itself. So there's that. I think this is enough for now. I'm going to keep on going on a couple different topics in this debate. I I think, in the next video. So my name is Brooks Lindsay. I'm the founder of Debatepedia.org. You can check out this article. It's on Debatepedia under the name Debate: Israeli Raid on Gaza Flotilla. So have a look, and thank you so much for listening.